Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to another episode of Speak the Truth. We've got a doozy for you today. We're going to be talking about Joe Kent, his statements that he's made over the last 24 hours. Well, really, it's not even a statement he made. It's his resignation letter that he saw fit to release to the public, where he decided to blame Israel for pretty much everything. So we're going to be taking a look at that today. We're also going to look at his previous statements and what he's actually said about the war in the past, what he's actually said about Iran in the past, because in the past, he absolutely labeled Iran a threat. Like, we make no mistake about it. He even went so far as like appearing on Sean Ryan just a couple weeks ago and bringing up the fact that Iran had their proxy organizations over inside of Iraq and it was being controlled by them, and several other things over time. He's even called for them for the United States government to actually strike Iran in the past, back in 2020. And as we are waiting to get into that, also another update for you guys that literally just happened right before I ended up clicking the go live button is that it seems that X is under attack again. Wouldn't you know it? So the days that, and this is why it's very pertinent. And just so you guys are tracking, like I'm not joking about that. Like, X is currently down. It's not running. I don't even think it's been reported yet, but X is currently down. I think this is very significant just for the fact that internet over inside of Iran was getting turned on yesterday. When I say it was getting turned on, I mean, we were getting more and more videos coming out from there. And the primary platform that those videos end up getting shared and going at is here on X. Now, most of them end up getting uploaded into like Telegram channels and things of that nature. And then people take them out of those Telegram chats and they bring it over to X. And sometimes it's misinformation or disinformation that ends up coming out of there. So it's very hard to filter through. But either way, you know, with as rapidly as things are changing these days, we've got to be able to, you know, take that information and get it over there and out in front of, you know, like we got to be able to take it, filter through and show you guys what's going on. And this just isn't how Matt does business. This is actually how mainstream media is doing business as well. This whole thing about Joe Kent being lit off yesterday all started when he ended up releasing that statement over on X. And I see people are saying X works for me. That's good. Hopefully it continues to work for you. But right now, from what I'm seeing, at least where I'm at, it ain't running. So if it's up and running for you guys, that's great. But all this started about 10 minutes ago, right at you know, the top of the hour, or right at the bottom of the hour. Like, as soon as I was scheduled to go live, is when we started getting these issues. So I can try closing it out and reopening, see if we have that, but it's currently not working to the best of my knowledge. So let me run another check and see if I can't get that sucker to work. But it doesn't appear that it is working right now. And that's okay, because I've got some other docs and stuff like that we're going to end up going over and show you guys some of like this past and history. Honest Reporting actually did a report on Joe Kent as well. So it's not something that like, yeah, look, I just closed everything out and reopened it. It's still down. It's down on my MacBook right here in front of me as well. That's running a VPN. I can switch to like different locations. This is running a VPN. I have a VPN and all over the place. Nope, she's down. And you watch if we probably go over to, what do you call it? Down Reporter. I bet we can find it. Down Detector. There we go. Let's get our butt over here. Google.com. Down Detector. And let's just see if X is running. Boom. There you go. User reports show problem with Twitter. There you go. She's down, ladies and gentlemen, and it's probably not going to come up. But look, at the bottom, at the end of the day, the reason I bring this up is because, in my opinion, this is, how do I want to say? It has to do with, how do I want to do? It has to do with the open flow of information being now turned back on over inside of Iran, and them wanting to deny those open flows of information. I brought up to you guys in the past how we ended up having those different cyber attacks that took place over here in the United States of America when it was first rumored that we were going to be bombing them like a couple of weeks ago. It was the Verizon network ended up getting attacked on the same day that X ended up getting attacked, on the same day that like all of these other things were happening, right? So hopefully that stuff ends up getting turned on, because that's where I have all my videos and stuff lined up for you guys, for you to be able to see. Proud American says it's down for me, but I'm on day 10 of a 30-day ban. Well, that's a little bit weird. All right, Joe Kent was a leaker who had been cut from president's intel briefings for months. Now, this is one of the big stories that they are coming out and slamming Joe Kent for. White House actually ended up making a statement earlier this morning. I had a clip for you guys to play from Caroline Leavitt the White House spokesperson, she had said that Joe Kent hadn't been involved in briefings for months. She actually confirmed these reportings that were coming out. They laid out in here, they say the departure of Joe Kent means one lesser leak in Washington, according to multiple reports. And it's a quote here about Joe Kent. Yeah, whatever. Anyways, lots of reports were coming out and saying that he had some intel leak over inside the Pentagon. And from what I could find, from what I was able to find, it was actually not Joe Kent himself. What they're alleging is it was like his assistant, and that was leaking information. That's what they're saying, was that it was his assistant that was leaking information. And he got let go a couple months ago, and now they are, coming after him. Also of note, information ended up getting shared about his wife back on February 28th or 29th that she works for Gray Zone. As most of you guys that follow this program know, Gray Zone has a lot of like communist propaganda that ends up coming out of it. And I do believe that that's mainly, maybe where this is coming from. Let's see here. We got Don B says, Matt, thank you for honesty and truth when reporting, because listening to MSM is disturbing, to be honest. Thank you for your service and doing what's right. Well, thank you very much. Proud American says it's down for me, but I'm on day 10 of a 30-day suspension. And looks like Incog Faraday's in here gifting out 5 Speak the Truth memberships as well. Exodus says at this rate, we could just blame Israel for everything and became popular on the world stage again. Can't believe how quick people are to hate Israel. Yeah, here's the thing about that. The statements about Iran not being a direct threat, Joe Kent, one of his statements that he ended up coming out with a while ago, like I think this was back in like 2020, was that, Trump's red lines are going to be Iran obtaining nuclear weapons, or Iran attempting to gain nuclear weapons. And that's very clear. Iran having a nuclear weapon is a threat for many reasons. Now, the primary argument that people like to throw out about this is saying that, well, Iran, was signed on to the JCPOA, and that the JCPOA and Trump's backing out of the JCPOA in 2018, going into 19, is one of the main reasons why Iran began to violate it. But here's the part that they don't tell you, is that it wasn't just the United States in the JCPOA. The UK, France, Germany, Russia, China, and Iran were also all signatories to the JCPOA, which forbid, Iran of uranium enrichment above 3.67%, and to cut and limit their stockpiles by 98%. So the real question would be, okay, well, the U.S. backed out in 2018, which means we reserve the right to continue to sanction Iran because we believe they're continuing to violate this crap, and it's a bad deal. They were also only supposed to have one enrichment facility over in Natanz. We know that's not true. They had numerous enrichment sites. They weren't supposed to build any new heavy water reactors and allow the IAEA to come in and conduct inspections and actually show them and allow them to show them everything. And the IAEA is documented over time. The International Atomic Energy Agency is supposed to say, listen, they're not the ones that say, listen, they are in violation of the NPT. They are not supposed to come out and state, any of that. They're just supposed to document what they find, and then the UN goes over the reports, and the UN says, yes, you are in fact in violation because of X, Y, and Z that was found. Well, the IAEA had found numerous sites and locations that Iran hadn't disclosed to them, where uranium had been enriched to extremely high levels, well beyond 60%. Iran also had 60% enriched uranium. Now, I say all of this to tell you that Iran didn't back out of the JCPOA until 2025. I'll say that again. Iran did not formally back out of the JCPOA until 2025. So if Iran can't back out of the JCPOA, or Iran was beholden to the JCPOA to 5 other countries, right? China, Russia, Germany, France, and the UK, not just the United States of America. And the UN was allowed underneath the JCPOA to, give sanctions relief to Iran, but they were violating it all the way up until 2025 when they backed out. They began violating it in 2019, according to reports. So the common grift and the common complaint is, well, the U.S. backed out of the JCPOA. That's complete and total crap. To be able for them to come out and state that it's the U.S.'s fault, because there was numerous other countries that were involved in that. Fox McCloud says, I feel like after America opens the Strait of Hormuz, they will pass the torch to the IDF to oversee the peaceful transition of power. Fox, I would agree with you in that, except for the fact that we have already how do I, ooh, looks like we might be running. We have already came out and said that we're not too much worried about opening up the Strait of Hormuz. One of the statements that I was going to play for you guys this morning by Caroline Leavitt was that the U.S. isn't really concerned with the Strait of Hormuz because we don't need it to survive. She feels like the president's stance is it affects the international community more than it does the United States. Therefore, the international community should be in there, reopening the strait. Now, with that being said, yesterday the United States did conduct a bombing campaign. Let me open up some visuals for you. Google Maps. Seeing as how my notes are all jacked up, we'll get you guys in there. But the U.S. did conduct a bombing campaign yesterday over in off the Strait of Hormuz, and their goal, what they were seeking of doing over here, was taking out Iranian anti-ship cruise missiles that were supposed to be fired at these other vessels. Now, it's kind of odd to me that we went after the cruise missiles second and we went after Cog Island first. And that should confirm to you guys that Iran did not fire cruise missiles or anti-ship ballistic missiles at these merchant vessels that were traveling over through the Strait of Hormuz. Cog Island was supposed to be where they were keeping, over here, is supposed to be where they were keeping all of their drones, all of their sea mines, all of that crap. So that's what they were doing. Effect says Joe Kent is a groiper and his wife is a leftist nutter. And we'll talk about that in a sec. Incog Faraday says Iran violated agreements and lied about everything. Shocking. Well, that wasn't just, Incog. It wasn't just the JCPOA they violated. They were also signatories to NPT, which they didn't suspend until last year as well. They were also, let's see here, they also funded foreign terror organizations and killed numerous U.S. service members. 1 out of every 5 U.S. service members killed or wounded over in the Middle East during the global war on terror was because of Iran. And of course, the last 3 U.S. service members that were killed in Jordan before the beginning of this war were also killed by an Iranian proxy. And that was underneath the Biden administration. And people wouldn't want to talk about that. And I'll remind you guys that these 3 U.S. service members were killed right over here in the tri-border region between Iraq, Syria, and Jordan. Over at the Al-Tanf camp. All right, that ended up going down with a drone attack, and you'll never believe who supplied him with the drone. Old Man Weiss says within the Ministry of Defense, with the Minister of Defense being killed and he was operating sleeper cells, they said, do you think the new leader will likely activate them? Well, another leader over inside of Iran ended up getting killed today. Israel came out and they opened up with that information as well. I think the sleeper cells have basically what I talked about over inside of Iran, which is like the no contact orders, which is why, was it a week and a half ago on Saturday, Iran had said that, so not this last Saturday, but the Saturday before that, Iran had said that they were not going to attack any more of the Gulf nations. Like they were going to stop attacking the Gulf states. And then less than an hour later, the UAE came underneath attack from Iranian drones. I have talked to you guys about severed communications, right? Talked to you guys about severed communications over inside of Iran and how those severed communications actually impact what's taking place on the ground. So the regime could have made the decision not to attack any of the Gulf states. But with those severed communications, they're likely going off the last order that was given to them, which is continue to attack at will, affect impact upon this enemy. Here's your target list. As soon as you guys feel capable of doing this, have at it, right? And send them out. And I think that's what happened. And so even here, if you talk about sleeper cells and you talk about upcoming, attacks, wars, etc., like how this is going to look, even if you talk about those sleeper cells being activated or not being able to be activated, they were likely given no contact orders, right? Like if in the event that this didn't happen, if for some reason communication is severed, these are your final marching orders. Like we want you to move on with this. And that's what makes them so dangerous. Because I'll remind you that, a lot of those sleeper cells are operating like decentralized and compartmentalized. So it's not necessarily that the supreme leader is giving orders of all of this stuff on what needs to happen. He's giving general information, just like we do in the United States. They get general information and then they act on that general information. Sometimes it is very specific, right? Sometimes they can get it. It's not always true to that extent, but that's how you make these groups so hard to find. And that's why when they end up gathering intel and they're doing intelligence collection, it's always concerning, because it'd be one thing if we had a choke point obviously, I think Tucker Carlson now realizes this. The United States government was spying on the Iranian regime and their telecommunications network. And that's what got Tucker Carlson being looked at by the intelligence community. It would appear, in my opinion, that Tucker Carlson was likely speaking with members of the regime, and he certainly seemed to have, I don't want to say alluded to it, but alluded to it is correct when he says, of course I talk with everybody else. That's what members in the media do. We talk with, foreign governments. Okay, so you were talking with the Iranian regime. And if you're talking with the Iranian regime and you gave information that was not supposed to be given, then that would allow the United States government to open up an investigation on you as an American citizen. Anyways, I bring that up because when we start talking about these sleeper cells and everything else, if that information is just being passed down through the choke point, which would be, like the Ayatollah or the main regime leadership, then that makes it very easy to pick up on what they're doing. But if they give out a verbal order and then that verbal order is disseminated verbally until they have to start, putting things out via electronic communication, and what ends up happening is then, your government is going to end up picking up on, one cell here and one cell there, and those little individual cells, are putting out their own orders, and they understand what's taking place, and then they have to piece together the big picture overall and say, listen, we've got reports from Hezbollah over inside of Lebanon. We've got reports from Kataib Hezbollah. We've got reports from the Houthis that they're all going to be firing ballistic missiles on this day. Therefore, or not ballistic missiles or rockets, ballistic missiles like drones, whatever, that it's all going to be going down on this day. That's how you're able to then piece it together up at the top. It makes it very hard to be able to get that out because at the same time, they're also putting out false information. And so it's trying to gather all that stuff together. That's a good question. And I think those sleeper cells are going to operate exactly how they've been told. Gigabyte says, Canadian prepper, please, I'm begging, exploit this guy. He's really spreading a lot of misleading propaganda. Just watch and you'll see. Are you talking about me? If you think I'm spreading misleading propaganda, I think you were dead ass wrong in your statement when you say that. I thoroughly believe that you are extremely misinformed if you think I'm spreading false propaganda. Let's go over to a report from Honest Reporting on Joe Kent and get that up for you guys. Honest Reporting. Extremists yesterday, authority today. Media whitewashes Joe Kent. Media outlets uncritically amplified Joe Kent's resignation, presenting his claims about Iran and Israel as credible despite a lack of scrutiny or context. And that is something that we have absolutely seen over the last 24 hours. He held the office, like an appointed office in the United States that was responsible for the security and well-being and intelligence gathering for the United States of America. Danny Lyons, one of these months we won't reopen a new front when I have leave. Danny, I've got stuff in my stack talking about Israel and their movements over inside Lebanon, and I will get to that here in just a little bit. But I'm with you. It's kind of one of those things. New fronts are going to continue to get open. All right. So as far as Joe Kent goes, Iran posed no imminent threat to our nation. Trump appointed intelligence office official resigns over Iran. That's what CNN put out. And that is also what Joe Kent ended up blasting out in his statement, that they didn't pose an imminent threat to our nation. Now they're talking about the United States mainland. Caroline Leavitt came out the other day and stated that there was no active intelligence that Iran was about to be targeting the United States, or words to that effect. You'll have to forgive me because I don't have that type of photographic memory that I can just recite her word for word. But that had to do with the Iranian drone strikes that were reported to be a threat over inside California. And she said that there was no such threat at the time. So the wording was very, very careful here. Saying to our nation. Well, that would allude to mainland United States of America. But what's even worse is that's not true. And we know this. And we know this because of the IRGC inside of Venezuela. We know this because of Hezbollah inside of Venezuela and numerous other things that I can't even talk about right now. But there is 1,000%, in my opinion, active threats that were on the United States of America. And by ripping out Maduro, and by targeting these quote unquote drug runners that were coming up from Venezuela, we are 100%, crushing that threat and making sure it doesn't come to the United States of America. When we start talking about like the broader picture, we start talking about overseas, obviously they've killed numerous Americans. Obviously they're attempting to gain nuclear weapons. This is not something like bad intel that we're getting. These are like direct reports on the ground from the International Atomic Energy Agency. And also, by the way, words straight out of the Iranian foreign minister's mouth when he said they have 460 kilograms of enriched uranium just last week. What is real? Does Israel possess nuclear weapons? Are they part of the NPT of 68? What other allied countries took the same stance? Thanks, Matt. Israel is not a signatory to the NPT, and it is rumored that they have nuclear weapons, although it's not confirmed. They were caught stealing nuclear technology from the United States of America, or so it would seem. And so it is rumored that they have nuclear weapons. It's not confirmed. One of the other things that ends up coming out of that is, if they are not a signatory to the NPT, the U.S. shouldn't really be doing business with them. That's actually not necessarily true. That is a half-truth / lie. What the deal is when it goes down to the U.S. doing business with foreign nations involved or not involved with the NPT really boils down to national security and the president's discretion. And we've seen, Democrat presidents such as Joe Biden, along with Donald Trump, that have continued to do business with Israel. So that portion of it's not true. Danny says, "Oh, I'm fine with new fronts. What sucks is the timing. Third Passover, I won't be with the family." Yeah, well, believe me, Danny, after 20 years of the global war on terror, I totally understand. Oh, Gigabyte says Canadian Prepper, the channel Canadian Prepper. There's a lot of them that are coming out, man, that are, how do I want to say, a lot of them that are coming out that are very giving bad information. Pat Loudon says, active threat or not, they were assassination attempts on our president. Yeah, you're correct. The United States government did come out and admit that they attempted to assassinate our president. That within itself, honestly, should tell people that Iran is just bad news.
Joe.
Now it looks like we've got our clips up, thank God, and you guys can hear.
Joe Kent, who works for Tulsi Gabbard over at the DNI, a political appointee, said he could no longer stay in his job. He was resigning over the Iran war. So he had objections. When is the last time he saw President Trump?
It's been a while. It's been a while since the president has seen him here at the White House. It's been a while since he's been involved in the process of the presidential daily briefs, and he's been actually present for the president's intelligence briefings. This was an individual who was not involved in any of the discussions pre-operation and throughout this operation. I think the president views it as deeply unfortunate that this individual, who the president gave the privilege of working for the administration, put out this resignation on government letterhead with many falsehoods throughout, essentially accusing the president of being manipulated by foreign governments. That's laughable and it's insulting. President Trump has been remarkably consistent on this issue of Iran for many, many years. Long before he ever entered politics, he has always said Iran can never possess a nuclear weapon. So anyone who works here should be well aware of the president's intentions and his peace through strength agenda and his willingness to use the United States military to achieve peace if and when necessary, as we have seen throughout Operation Epic Fury.
So this is the point that I'm trying to make here. Like, as we start looking at it all, and I'm really glad that this stuff is all opened up now. That way I can start going over it. But that's not the only statement that ended up getting put out by the United States as far as Joe Kent's concerned. She actually came out with several other statements. And I'm going to be going over a bunch of those here in just a minute with you. A little bit behind because, Twitter was doing Twitter things. But at the end of the day, we're going to get a lot of these statements out. And while we're on Joe Kent, I'll go ahead and get those Joe Kent pieces rolling. That way you guys don't miss out on them. But let's take a look at some of his previous statements that he has made. This is March 3rd, 2022. My opponents are again spreading lies about me. I strongly condemn Nick Fuentes' politics, especially in regards to our ally Israel. I ignored his invitation to speak at his recent conference in Orlando, and I'm not aware of, nor do I accept any endorsement from him. That is one of his many statements. The other big lie, about Iran not posing a threat, Speaker of the House ended up coming out and actually, smashing him over it.
I'm on the Gang of Eight. I got all the briefings. We all understood there was clearly an imminent threat, that Iran was very close to the enrichment of nuclear capability, and they were building missiles at a pace that no one in the region could keep up with. They were far outpacing our allies and friends and us in our defense capability, because we had personnel, installations, members of the armed services, and civilians in the region. Iran was building up ballistic missiles at such a rapid pace, and we knew that their plan was to fire them upon Americans. The commander-in-chief and his administration had a very difficult decision to make. I don't know where Joe Kent is getting his information, but he wasn't in those briefings, clearly, because the Secretary of State, the Secretary of War, and everyone, the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Kane, they had exquisite intelligence, and we understood that this was a serious moment for us. Had the president waited, I am personally convinced that we would have mass casualties of Americans, service members and others, and our installations would have been dramatically damaged. And so we had to, the president felt that he had to strike first to prevent those mass casualties. That's a summary. I can't tell you the classified part, but that's a summary that's made public, and it's accurate. Yes.
Yeah, that within itself is a pretty dang good statement. If they're attempting to gather these weapons, they're attempting to create these weapons, and they're attempting to attack U.S. forces over in the region, over 50,000, stationed across the Middle East at any given point in time. That's a bit of a problem. Fox McCloud says, look up Argentina's terrorist incident of '94. This was tied to Iran, and tell me again how they aren't a threat. And it's worse today. I wholly agree with you. That's not a mistake. This one is a bit disturbing as we start looking at it. This is what is being reported. Joe Kent was registered as a Democrat until 2021. He affiliated with the Libertarian Party from 2012 to 2019, then switched to the Democrat Party in 2019. He remained a Dem through 2020. He began running for Congress in Washington's 3rd District as a Republican starting around that time. And that is what was put out on that. And then a couple other posts. Iran has been after Trump. This is again, September 25th of 2024. Iran has been a threat after Trump since January of 2020, after he ordered the targeted killing of the terrorist Soleimani. This isn't a new threat. The Secret Service consistently failing to secure Trump is new. 2 hours ago. Then you have, after much reflection, I have decided to resign from my position. I cannot in good conscience support the ongoing war with Iran. I mean, it's just a constant flip-flop of them. And then, of course, we've also got statements that ended up coming out from Dan Bongino.
On a plaque in a facility I can't really talk about. And when you read the story there, it's a tough story to read. But, again, as I've said with other... the sacrifice is beyond reproach. That doesn't mean that this current opinion is any more fact-based, because it's not. I'm really sorry, Laura. I mean, I read probably a lot more intelligence than he did, because they don't have a law enforcement function, the National Counterterrorism Center. They're an analytical clearinghouse. They're valuable. However, I've had access to just about everything. And how you could come to the conclusion that the Israelis did it, and there was no imminent threat here? Really? What about the anti-ship ballistic missiles, the drone program, 440 kilograms of 60% enriched nuclear material, their constant death to America chance? I mean, that's called evidence. In some limited circles, we call that, a clue. I mean, I don't know at what point you thought this wasn't an imminent threat after you've read a lot of the stuff I read. And by the way, that's just the open source stuff we can talk about on the air. I promise you, the president, has a bevy of material that if he could do the Men in Black thing and erase your mind tomorrow, if he told you right now, you would come to the imminent threat conclusion in a snap.
Well, a senior U.S.
So, it's not just the White House that's saying it. And then we've got previous statements from Joe Kent all the way back in 2023. Battleground Washington, Joe Kent made the following statement: I am saddened and angered by the violent attacks against our ally Israel. Hamas's unprecedented violence was made possible by the Biden administration providing the #1 state sponsor of terror $6 billion and sending over $300 million of our tax dollars to assist terrorists in Gaza. Biden has consistently enabled Iran and its proxies to indiscriminately attack Israeli civilians. Mary Perez did not condemn Rep. Jayapal when she labeled Israel a racist state, and she refused to remove the anti-Semitic Rep. Omar from the House Foreign Affairs Committee. When I went to Congress, When I get to Congress, I will not authorize 1 cent of financial aid to Iran or Hamas, and I will make sure Israel gets the weaponry they need to keep themselves secure. These are all previous statements that he has made. And so the way it would seem, all right, and what's being laid out right now, and I'm just telling you guys what's being laid out and what people are stating about him, is basically he was a lifelong Dem, and that he ended up flipping, all right, in order to get into this position. And then he gets into the position and then starts using that to leak intelligence. Now, probably, how do I want to say this? I don't even want to go here, but I'm going to go here. Max Blumenthal, most of you guys know him. He runs Gray Zone. Joe Kent's wife is now reportedly working for Gray Zone. I'll show you guys that in just a minute. Max Blumenthal, the kind of U.S. national security official Israel's fear versus the kind it can manage. Ends up putting this post out yesterday. So I've got a huge report that I'm doing on Gray Zone for you guys in just a little bit. But again, it's making sure when I go after people that I'm doing it correctly and labeling it for, how do I want to say this, what it really is. Bree Dial ended up putting out the following yesterday, and it went absolutely freaking insane. She has been writing Joe Kent's butt very, very hard about everything. And I do want to read this for you guys over what she said about him, because I think it is absolutely pertinent to what's been going on. And give me 1 sec. If I can't find it, that's fine. Here we go. So she says, let me blow this up on the screen for you guys. And for those of you guys that don't know Bree is a friend of mine. She's a very reputable human being. And she has worked for some MSM outlets before in the past. Anyways, she says, this is Joe Kent's current wife, an employee of former Hezbollah and RT Russian propagandist Max Blumenthal, who is just platformed by Dugan-linked Alexander Dugan. Joe Kent's former wife was Shannon Kent, a highly decorated U.S. Navy senior chief cryptologic technician, posthumously promoted, who served in elite intelligence roles, including with JSOC's intelligence support activity. She was fluent in multiple languages and had multiple combat deployments. She died on January 16th, 2019, at the age of 35, in a suicide bombing claimed by Iran-backed ISIS at a restaurant in Manbij, Syria. The attack targeted U.S. personnel during a stop after a meeting. She was killed along with 3 other Americans while supporting operations against Iranian-backed ISIS as part of the Operation Inherent Resolve. She was the first female U.S. service member killed in combat in Syria, and the first by enemy fire in over 3 years. This is Kent's new wife, Heather Kaiser. She's a former military intel officer, a veteran of Iraq and Afghanistan. She is an independent researcher and analyst for defense intelligence and political matters. She earned her bachelor's in geopolitics from the United States Military Academy at West Point and earned a degree in sculpture from Indiana University. Since 2020 riots, she has returned to research and analysis of current events and organizations such as American Contingency and Gray Zone. So there's your report on her. Blake says, once our troops are in contact and on a mission, they deserve 100% support. Discouraging from their mission is shameful and dishonorable. Argue your issues later. He's in the same boat as Kelly now. That's something I agree with. I heard of a lot of people that have came out and stated that, if you want to properly support the troops, you should be opposing the war, as if the troops that are over there didn't volunteer to do that job in particular. If we were to send people in on the ground, if we were to send in combat troops onto the ground, you act as if it's something that they wouldn't actually want to do, that they didn't sign up for. The reality is, and I can tell you this after spending years in the infantry and special forces, that we absolutely are willing to chew the enemies of the United States of America and spit them right back out. Right? Like more than eager, more than willing. Like there is an entire generation of U.S. veterans that were harassed, killed, wounded, and freaking screwed up for the rest of their life by the Iranian regime. You don't think that U.S. service members want to get some payback for that? You're dead ass wrong. Of course, you're going to have some outliers in there that are going to be conscious objectors, et cetera, that are bought into the propaganda just like everybody else. However, for the most part, U.S. troops don't think that way. Phantom Shaman coming in and gifting out a Speak the Truth membership. Thank you very much for that donation. Appreciate you, brother. And Incog, thank you for the donation towards my research. Really, really appreciate that. Now, want to point this out because it is important, and because Joe over on Sean Ryan absolutely talked about the militias over inside of Iraq that are being ran by the Quds Force and IRGC. This is one of their drones yesterday that ended up getting taken out. I just love that video. I don't know. Absolutely love it. I see people that are in the comment section screaming about CPAC's going to get taken out. Like, okay. Let's also talk about all of the other PACs that are actually out there. I don't agree with lobbyists. I don't agree anybody that's in any of those organizations that are actually providing money to the United States government should be dual passport holders. That is my opinion. You're either American or you're not. So either jump on the train or get the hell out. Man, I missed your super chat. Now I got to go back and find it. I feel like I probably missed a couple of them. Doing my best to keep up here. Jay Blake, once our troops are in contact and on mission, they deserve our support. Yep, we read that one. All right, I'm looking for you, brother. I can't find you, but I'm looking. And it's not letting me see it. So I don't know if I did, in fact, miss it. I'm looking for it right now. Incog, Blake, Dirty Frogs. What are your thoughts about Valhalla VFT's take? I think he's dead ass wrong. I think he's jumped on the grift train. If you want to know my actual opinion on it, I think he's jumped on the grift train. That's my take on it. I think he's easily jumped on the grift train. We saw it with the Charlie Kirk shooting, saying that there's no possible way that this guy could have done it, and all sorts of things. So that's my thoughts on him. Let's see here. I don't see a super chat by you, brother. Oh, hey, Matt, you seen Hassan Piker was on Iranian State TV? No, I did not see that. That didn't cross my radar. That one did not cross my radar. So apologize for missing that super chat. Looks like I might have missed one or two others while I was in there as well. Yeah. How did that individual ever catch Shannon? Rest in peace. I'm not quite sure who you're talking about, to be honest. Phantom Shaman coming in, gifting I Speak the Truth membership. And I believe that catches us up on those super chats. Always doing my best to make sure I can, get out there. United States also ended up releasing some footage. I talked to you guys about them bombing the, ballistic or anti-ship capabilities last night, taking those anti-ship capabilities out of the Strait of Hormuz. They're also releasing videos now of the United States taking out entrances to some of these tunnels and collapsing the tunnels, which is very difficult. Like bombs look very violent. Now, allegedly, the bombs that were used over in the Strait were 5,000-pound bunker buster, like advanced penetrators. Hopefully, that's what ended up happening, and hopefully those are taken care of. Fox McCloud says, I don't want to be disrespectful to our troops, but like you said, they signed up for this. They're doing the exact job they wanted, but maybe I'm wrong. No, Fox, you're not wrong. The entire time, I was serving inside of the United States military. Every single time a unit came up for deployment, 99% of the guys were freaking pumped about it. And I served my entire career in combat arms. Every time, guys were pumped. They wanted to volunteer. They wanted to be there. And that is with, the unjustified wars in Iraq and unjustified wars in Afghanistan and all that crap going on. No, guys absolutely wanted to be a part of it. There was no talk of Israel pushing this entire thing. There was none of that crap until Tucker Carlson and everybody else started running their mouth about it. Candace Owens, like the whole grift train. And I'd refer you guys, over to Russian influence, Iranian influence, Chinese influence, all on social media. And that's where it's getting after it. So that's all I have to say about that. Very, very annoying. Allegedly, Israel also ended up attacking the largest natural gas facility over inside of Bushehr as well, taking that out. So that's good that sucker ended up getting taken out. And Hezbollah terror targets, unloading weapons, still a very real thing over inside of Lebanon. Israel ended up crushing those bastards and has continued to crush them. Just this morning, Israel came out with information stating that they were going to basically blow up every bridge that crosses the Litani River. And I've got videos of some of those airstrikes coming out here in just a little bit. Danny, again, says, in your opinion, what's a reasonable troop requirement to take and hold Cog Island? I don't think there is a reason for us to take and hold Cog Island. I don't see a viable reason in order to take and hold Cog Island, to be perfectly honest with you. It also depends on the enemy force that's on Cog Island, to be clear. What benefit does the United States government have putting boots on the ground on Cog Island? Like what strategic importance does it come out, to be? If we were going to conduct an assault on that thing, we would have not stopped bombing it since last week. We would continue to be bombing it to this day. We would continue to be blowing it up. That's what we would be doing. We would continue to be blowing it up. But looking at Cog Island and the infrastructure that's on it, you got a lot of civilians that are on there. You would need, in my opinion, probably 10,000 troops, or like 5,000 troops, 5 to 10,000 troops to throw on that sucker. And that's on the ground because of the amount of civilians that are on there. You've got a airport, you've got multiple nuclear sites, things like that. All of it, or I'm sorry, not nuclear sites, oil sites. All of that stuff, requires maintenance, and we got to be able to like keep that crap up. It becomes our responsibility the moment we go in there. And contrary to popular belief, the U.S. doesn't need that oil. I know that's the grift that everybody is pushing right now, is that the United States wants Cog Island because of the oil. We don't need their oil. We honestly, we don't. And people that state that are just retarded, in my opinion. Those bridges over the Litani, absolutely real. Israel is striking them and taking them out. Con, I'm always screwing up your name, man. He says, I was a 42 Alpha and enlisted, not wanting to fight. I wish I was back in to give Iran the business now. Yeah, dude, you and a bunch of veterans like really wish we were in to be able to give Iran the business, but I don't hear any complaints. I haven't heard of any people defecting as far as Air Force pilots, Navy pilots, Marine pilots go that have been conducting these operations over in the Middle East. I haven't heard any of those types of reports coming out yet. Jay Blake says, I lived Hanoi Jane in the 60s. Made me sick then and now. We don't agree 100% of the time, Matt, but no, you are appreciated. Thank you. I appreciate that. I can't believe, like, when I looked into that situation with her, man, absolutely disgusted me. Absolutely disgusted me what she was doing. And it's the same crap that we're seeing to this day. Only it's not just one. It's like numerous. We have so many Americans that have been bought off by Russia and RT that are over there doing these things. It's freaking disgusting. Yeah, I know, John Boy, that I don't know 10% of the Kent story. Neither do most people. Like 99.99999% of the American public know the totality of the Kent situation. So I think it's responsible to wait for it all to come out and to see what actual things they have before I smear a man that has served his country valorously. I did this even with Anthony Aguilar, if you guys remember. I gave him an honest shake, and then I interviewed him, and then I buried him. That's what I did, because that is the responsible thing to do. Incog Faraday says, I think Cog Island survives until the regime change is abandoned. It's not going to go anywhere. Like the vast majority of their oil ends up like flowing in through that place and exporting. So that place, regardless of whether or not there is a regime change or there's not a regime change, if we don't want to be paying Iran for the rest of our freaking life as a country in order to help rebuild it, then we need to leave that place intact and we need to make sure it's secure. The problem is if we end up putting boots on the ground over on Cog Island, which I know everybody seems to think is the truth. I talked about it yesterday morning. The only reason we would put boots on the ground, in my opinion, is what, 2,500 Marines in that MEU, the 31st MEU, 2,500. And what everybody misses is that they're special operations capable, meaning that they can support special operations missions. It's a light fighter unit. So if the United States decides it needs to go in to secure that enriched uranium or to ensure its destruction after targeted strikes, and we need to go on the ground to do that over in the middle of Iran, you would not just need a freaking company of Army Rangers in order to secure that location. You would need a lot of freaking meat eaters. And who better to send than a MEU on the ground in order to make that happen? I would think that you would send a MEU in, a bunch of freaking Marines loaded down heavy that aren't going to gripe, that aren't going to complain. They're going to lock that place down and allow those special operations troops to do what they need to do in order to make that happen. I think that is actually what the United States is looking at doing. But I don't think we're going to do that until after, all right, there has been a formal outcoming. We've already seen a formal outcoming of the shadow government. We've already seen signs on the ground inside of Tehran and several other locations that there is going to be, how do I want to say, that there's going to be targeted attacks of officials, and more have came out over the last 24 hours. And so it's not going to be until after that, I think, that when the regime is actually busy, that you're going to see any operation like that actually taking place. Back over in Lebanon, I need to point this out. This is a very big deal. You know, the international community had came to an agreement about getting rid of Hezbollah, and that agreement fell through. Absolutely fell through. The UN failed at their job to rid southern Lebanon of Hezbollah. And because of that, Israel has launched a ground incursion into Lebanon. And this is a much, I don't even know how to explain this. This is a much broader portion of dismantling the IRGC and dismantling Iran's tentacles. Hezbollah is a very big threat, not just to Israel itself, but also to the United States of America, as I previously explained, with their relationship they had with Maduro and getting diplomatic passports and things like that. So because of that, we now have Israel that's taking out the bridges going across the Litani River, which is going to isolate Hezbollah. Now, there's lots of ways that they can actually get down into the south, but a lot of those are coming across the Syrian border. It's much easier to strike. It's much easier to spot. Over inside like mainland Lebanon, they have their like terror infrastructure, their rat lines, their networks and stuff like that, where they're moving these things. Yesterday, I played a video of a ballistic missile, for crying out loud. Right? Yesterday, I played a video of one of their ballistic missiles that they fired up over at Israel. And so that is, in my opinion, one of the more significant, what's taking place right now with them taking these river crossings out, one of the more significant developments that I don't think people actually realize. Because what this signifies is that, much like Gaza, Israel is now, like, mark my words, them striking these bridges is isolating Hezbollah. It's not allowing them to leave, and it's not allowing them to enter. So Israel striking these bridges is a huge, huge indicator. I don't think Israel's backing out of Lebanon until Hezbollah is done. And this is going to last longer than Iran. Danny says, I mean, if you guys don't want Cog, we'll take it off your hands by buying all that energy. Yeah. I mean, maybe, I don't know. Maybe that's a deal Trump's working out. I have no idea. But yeah, I mean, no, the United States, we absolutely don't need it. Statement from the CENTCOM commander also came out yesterday, and I understand I'm rapid firing this information at you guys because we had a slow start because of internet issues, but statement from Brad Cooper.
We continue to remain centered on our military objectives. These are well defined and include eliminating Iran's ballistic missiles, drones, and naval threats. To date, our Air Force, Navy, and Marine Corps aviators have collectively flown more than 6,000 combat flights, demonstrating the unmatched capability of America's joint force as we maintain air superiority over Iranian skies. And to the entire Operation Epic Fury team, keep pushing, remain steady, fight to win. Thanks so much, and Godspeed.
So, Caroline Leavitt ended up coming out today saying that the United States ended up striking over 6,500 targets, and that's up significantly. And other big news of what's actually coming down there, which a lot of people probably don't even know, is Ukraine is actually going to be sending in troops now. There's over 200 on their way.
Ladies and gentlemen, right now there are 201 Ukrainians in the Middle East and Gulf region, and another 34 are ready to deploy. These are military experts who know how to help, how to defend against Shahid drones. Our teams are already in the Emirates, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, and on the way to Kuwait. We are working with several other countries. Agreements are already in place. We do not want this terror of the Iranian regime against its neighbors to succeed. And I sent these military experts at the request of our partners, including the United States. In fact, this is a part of drone deal we proposed to the United States, which we worked on together and which is still on the table.
So, Zelensky is not an idiot. he made sure that if he's going to be sending his troops over there into the Middle East in order to help, it's also going to be part of a deal, made with the United States of America. They're going to benefit from it. I told you guys, Zelensky's not dumb. He's going to, well, maybe he is, but he is going to, use this, as leverage with the United States to get more things out. And it most certainly seems like that's exactly what he did. Fox McGlath says, I think Iran is suffering a talent attrition. Yeah, that they are, especially the Iran supporters. They have zero good arguments. Airborne Professor once was 60 years old, 11 Bravo Airborne, where time for reporting. I am no longer high speed, but I can sit on a mound of earth and help take out objects. Airborne Professor, you might still be high speed. You're just low drag. Wrap that one around your head. Let's see here, or high drag. High speed and high drag. There we go. Danny says, this will be my third time conquering South Lebanon. Said it before, say it again. Not leaving a third time. I will start my own town. Yeah. Well, that's pissing everybody off. They're all saying it's part of the greater Israel plan. And Israel is 1000% looking at taking out, more chunks of land that they need to and they want to. It's not, the way in which people frame it, in my opinion. And it has more or less to do with, how do I want to say? It has more or less to do with national security than anything else. Because, they were, in fact, creeping up to the borders. And I think it's kind of BS. I've got good examples of Israel needing that, which I can bring up along with several other nations. Let's go here. Yeah. So yesterday, Iran was celebrating, what is it? Their Festival of Fire. Netanyahu ended up coming out with these statements, and they were bombing and they were taking out besieged forces on the ground over inside of Israel so that people could celebrate.
I'm here with Israel's defense minister, our chief of staff, the head of the Mossad, the chief of Air Force, our senior commanders. In the past 24 hours, we knocked out 2 of the terrorist chieftains, the top terrorist chieftains of this tyranny. Our aircraft are hitting the terror operatives on the ground, in the crossroads, in the city squares. This is meant to enable the brave people of Iran to celebrate the Festival of Fire. So celebrate and Happy Nowruz. We're watching from above. I'm here with
here we go. Escape the city, says Aguilar is still on the rounds. Yeah, well, I mean, you can't make stupid people go away, can you? There's always going to be some moron that's going to platform him. Big news is that he's not really doing anything of any importance, and he's been ousted as a liar. And so anything he says is literally of no importance, unless there's people out there that haven't heard of his dumb butt. These are airstrikes taking out the besieged forces yesterday that were moving in on the people that were celebrating, their extremely exciting, holiday. There's more videos that ended up coming out as well from that area of different strikes that were taking place. This one in particular as well shows a airstrike sitting on one of the besieged forces just chilling on the side of the street. And an airstrike ends up coming in and taking them out. Now, I brought up the drones yesterday and how I believe that there is a huge sign, right? Huge sign that we have operatives that are on the ground, intelligence assets, whatever, and signs of the uprising. People are pointing to this video and saying, well, because of this video here and this guy, if it is a drone that was inbound or a bomb that was inbound, the guy's like staring down and he's not doing anything, and so he doesn't even hear it coming, and then he just ends up getting killed. Correct. Very, very true. Why? Because it goes down to people's mentality of where they're at and what they're doing. If the guy is like sitting there reading his Quran on the side of the road, praying, and he's deeply involved in whatever it is that he's doing, which it certainly appears to be, he's probably not paying attention to a lot that's going on, outside. That most certainly appears as if he's sitting there praying. So he's probably not paying attention to everything else that's going on. He's in his own head. And so it's just an example of some of the misinformation that's out there trying to get people schooled up. This is the alleged site from yesterday's attack that ended up taking out Iran's leadership and freaking killing them. Iranian ballistic missiles then, following that attack, ended up raining down over Israel, as you guys can see here. We'll just pause it right there so we don't have to listen to the sirens. Obviously, cluster munitions, we talked about this. Those ballistic missiles have 80, bomblets in each of them, 20 kilograms apiece, 3 kilograms worth of explosives. One of them managed to find their way into a home over inside of Israel and kill an elderly couple. Looks like several of them also impacted a train station over in Tel Aviv. Now, I have talked to you guys before about the weight of these things being 20 kilograms and the fact that they are released upon reentry. And that's why they look like they're on fire, burning all the way down to the ground. Those things are so heavy, you know, they're going to bust through concrete and everything else. So they're pretty effective when it goes down to penetrating it. To me, it looks like they might have a delayed fuse or something like that on them now. Let me pause this and get this up. Certainly appears like they might have like some sort of a delayed fuse or something on them, because they're smashing through things and then detonating inside of them. They're not like point detonation weapons. It appears as if they were designed to be, how do I want to say this? It appears as if they were designed to be delayed detonation for that very purpose of penetrating. And they're effective at doing that. But the problem is for Iran at least, is when they fall in, say, a city street, they get buried in the ground, and thankfully that ends up containing a lot of the blast. But nonetheless, this video should have been actually stacked up earlier. These are Hezbollah rocket. This is a Hezbollah rocket barrage that was fired to Israel. And Cog Faraday says, rumor is that there's a growing goat shortage in their afterlife. I haven't heard that rumor yet. As a matter of fact, I heard that they're being buried with their favorite goat and taking it along with them. And as a sacrifice in their virgins that they're supposed to be receiving, their 70 virgins, they bury the biggest 2-ass goat that they can find alongside of the fighters. And then that also doubles. So instead of having 70 virgin goats with them, they actually have 140 virgin goats with them. So that's good. That you got to love that. All right, this is a look inside of one of the homes that actually ended up getting smashed with one of those bombs that I told you guys about. You guys can see just a clear hole punched right through the roof into this particular residence. So they're, like I said, they're fairly effective when it comes down to penetrating and doing what it is that they do. It's crazy. But long story short, if we were to look and say, okay, well, where is the current U.S. war over inside of Iran? Where does that sit? I say it's sitting fairly well right now. The regime is getting schwacked from the air. The besieged forces actually showed up to a party yesterday, and I lost the videos of it. But people were like burning stuff for their celebration of fire out in the middle of the street. And besieged forces ended up showing up. You hear AKs and gunfire, and then the next thing you hear are drones, and you see the besieged forces running for their damn lives and taking off and going in the opposite direction. That, in my opinion, is a huge sign, coupled with a lot of the other videos that we've seen, is that those drone strikes are terrorizing the besieged forces on the ground, and they are struggling to maintain control. But the fact that the people were very confident in going out on the streets yesterday, and Netanyahu saying that they were going to continue to strike them, go out, celebrate, have a good time, we got your back, is pretty troubling, at least as far as the IRGC goes. So I think we've got good domination over the airspace. It most certainly appears as if the people had a good soft launch yesterday of being able to come out, and likely those rumors of the ambushes that I'm telling you guys about are also spreading over there. I have heard from several people about other different groups and factions that are on the ground that are in fact conducting those strikes and have been for quite some time. So I think once we continue to like degrade them and they reach a certain point, that's when you're going to see that kick off. That's when you're going to see Kurds kick off, and that's when you're going to start seeing those special operations troops going in and securing that enriched uranium that's on the ground. Danny says, legit merch idea hit me when I saw Netanyahu, a pinky ring with a silicone 6-finger attached. Not a bad idea. Not a bad idea. Not a bad idea at all. All right. With that, ladies and gentlemen, I will leave you on the words of Donald Trump talking about how destroyed Iran is. And I'll remind you that after the 12-day war, I'm pretty sure I heard him say that we set them back 10 years as well. Gordon Beaton says, as per my previous super chat, Canada is lost. We have 700 confirmed IRGC members living here. Canada's screwed, man. There's a reason all of those churches started to freaking burn down last year. Like, Canada's screwed. Like, it is on the chopping block. Not because people hate Canada, because of all of the crazy things that Canada's done. Y'all have done some wild stuff, don't get me wrong. In my opinion, it's because Canada is a backdoor to the United States of America. And that's why they're going after Canada, and that's why it's crucial that Canada ends up waking up and taking care of this Islamic terror threat as well. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining me for another episode. Peace, love, happiness, and God bless. I'm out of here.
Somebody said they could leave today and it would take 10 years to rebuild the damage that's been done. But I think we have to make it a little bit more permanent because no other president has to go through this, and we shouldn't have any other president having to go through this kind of a thing. And if they didn't want to do it, if for some reason they didn't want to do it, we'd have the same problem. We don't ever want to have that problem again, not with lunatics. We can't have lunatics controlling nuclear weaponry. So I just want to thank everybody.